do, where we've been, who we're with, who we're not with, where we was born, and all that stuff. So maybe it's a chance to connect with the audience.
Yeah. Well, Andy, I spent 5 years in your land, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Until they chased you away, of course.
Yep.
Just a
And
joke, yeah.
yeah, and I was in South Korea for 11 years, a couple of years in China. Uh, Spent some time in India, 2 peace conferences, toured the whole country. Very interesting.
Yeah, I like India and Sri Lanka. I've been there once myself.
Yes.
The people, the Indian people, the Chinese people in our countries, they don't seem to want to mix. They don't seem to be, from my point of view, they don't seem to be engageable. They just do their own thing, and that's the end of it. But you can't meet a better Chinese or an Indian person in their own country. They really are special people. They're hospitable. They really love to know where you're from. But it's a shame that the people over in our countries are, I guess, are too westernized to care. So I do find that really humble. When you go to Asia, no matter what part, they really love to meet the tourist.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that about your immigrant population there. I mean, I've met Anglo Indians and I found them very friendly. In fact, I became best friends with two of them, um, Manish Poppet and a Sikh fellow named Michael Nangla. He wasn't an Orthodox Sikh. He didn't wear any of the costume apparel. He just that was his background. But he was from Leeds. I guess he was born there, and both of them were very much British and had been assimilated. So they were as Western, certainly, as they were Eastern. Yeah. So I was
They were,
telling you about Mei Ling. She was in my philosophy department at the University of Warwick, and I actually met her when I moved into the flat that she had formerly occupied, and she came by, I think, to pick up some stuff, as I recall. And one look at her, and I was entranced, just mesmerized by her beauty. She's a tiny thing, but nevertheless stunningly beautiful.
yeah, those were the days, eh?
Mm.
When you was younger.
Yeah, yeah. I have to say, being in your 20s is a nice time of life.
It was for me back then too, but the youth of today, they don't seem to be that excited anymore at that age.
Yeah, well, they went through the COVID thing, and I think it's knocked the stuffing out of a good many of them. I've found the schools here are full of traumatized teenagers that have anxiety problems and have coping problems, and they have their therapist come into the school to talk about their issues and how some arrangement has to be made to help them cope better with their anxiety. Arrangements are made to reduce the amount of assignments, and some liberties are given to them about attending classes and all kinds of special protocols, which I do not support and I do not approve of. I mean, life is tough, but you have to toughen up and suck it up and deal with it. You can't make excuses for why you're maladjusted and can't cope. Sorry, society won't tolerate it. You don't do your job, you get fired. You don't show up for work, you get fired. You have to adapt to the realities of the working career world. You can't cater to their whining and complaining and sob stories if you want them to be a success in life. If not, I'm sorry to say they're going to have a very, very hard road. And yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, Andy, and I don't blame them. I blame the psychopaths that created the pandemic. Fully, I blame them. They're Luciferians, I believe, and they did it deliberately to sabotage the world economy, to bring in their new world order, as they call it. It's the Talmudic world order is what it is. And they're imposing their will on humanity to create a fascist world government under the guise of communist world government. In actual fact, we're returning to a kind of feudalism. And they're going to have us in these 10-minute cities. You're going to have to produce passports for this disease and that disease, certifying that you've been vaccinated by their poisonous, fraudulent vaccinations. And it's going to be a nightmare dystopian world if they get their will, if they get their wish. And I don't know, Andy, I hope we can resist. I mean, you see some effort in Ireland to stop the wave of immigration that's ruining the country. I mean, okay, some immigration, fine, but it shouldn't be above 20%. Otherwise, you subsume and overwhelm the local culture, the local heritage of the country. It's just insanity. If you want to come to a new land, you have to respect its culture and do something to show that respect, assimilate, adopt the local values to some extent. No, don't impose your foreign values on the country that has offered you asylum. It's an insult and it shouldn't be tolerated.
Yeah, we're having asylum problems, very, very big ones. They're coming in as single men. They're not coming in as families, which you don't mind helping families out, but they're just single men. And in fact, so many thousands of Afghans, they've had their identities leaked in Afghanistan because they helped the British and the Americans. And of course, I think there's about 20,000 of them that they now have been told, they have to come to Britain to be safe. So that's like 20,000 because of a UK data breach. It's ridiculous. And most of them, they don't want to learn your English. They don't want to learn your tradition. They just want to basically screw the government and then go back home. They're not bothered if they get asylum or not. They just want to get as much money out of the system as possible.
Well, that's regrettable. I had two Afghani students in a private school in Toronto that became friends, and I heard their whole refugee story. And Zore, the girl, told me the whole story, which I transcribed and wrote down, and then I turned it into a novel called Must I Remember? And I think it's a fine novel, and did capture the situation that they faced back in Afghanistan. And the father was a journalist, and the Taliban kidnapped him 3 times, and he knew that if they were to kidnap him one more time, he wouldn't ever be coming home again. So he decided the family had to leave for all of their safety. And so they left. And initially, they went to the closest border that they could safely go to, and then they moved on from there. But initially, they crossed into Pakistan. But before that, they were deboarded from the bus by the Taliban, who came marching down the aisle of the bus and were scrutinizing everyone to see, presumably, if there was someone they recognized. And they made everyone get off the bus. And right in front of the wife and the children, they shot Mr. Rastami point blank. And that was the end for him. The mother was just distraught, absolutely, just overwhelmed by this tragedy. And the boy was kicking and screaming and just punching at these Taliban, and they grabbed him by the hair and took him with them, and they took him back to a compound in the desert. And he later, because he was very small at that point, he was about 10 years of age, he actually escaped the compound through a window, unlocked the door from the outside, and let everyone out. And they crossed through the desert while the Taliban were out about somewhere in their vehicles. They escaped and off through the desert and up over a mountain range, passing through several former Soviet satellite countries until they eventually arrived in Moscow. That's just his odyssey to get to Russia. There's more to his story, but the girl, Zore, and her mother, Mrs. Rastami, they ended up going to Iran, where the mother was not well received. She was perceived as being essentially a prostitute, because where's her man? She's got a child, but no man. So it was very difficult for them to find a place to stay. They did get help from a religious group where they were able to stay in one of their buildings in a room, and then they had to go out later to look for a place to stay. And it was really hard finding a landlord that would take them in because of the mother's status. So I do understand the plight of refugees. Yes, Orion.
Yeah, that sounds a generous story, but I wasn't really referring to the Afghans as over here that are taking the mickey out of our system. It's the Syrians and all the other ones. You know, the Afghans are coming over because there was a data error.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the you know, the Iraqs, the Syrians. They don't have no interest in our country really. But they're coming in on small boats, at least hundreds a day, thousands a week, and have done for the last 20 years nearly. Well, maybe less than that, but our government seems to have their hands tied, and they won't talk to France about, you know, let one in and take one back, and yeah, it's all mad. You know, none of this talking about our stories when we were younger. There was no asylum problems. There was no vaccine. Well, there might have been vaccine problems, but not that much anyway. And life just seemed to be special, didn't it? I mean, I used to think nothing of buying a ticket on the local regional network and travel 200 or 300 miles by train overnight just to spot a few more trains when I was younger. I really used to love traveling, meeting people, and you know, you met strangers at night, but I don't know what it was. You just didn't fear from them, you know, whether they're black, white, or indifferent. You know, the people that I met when I was under 18, they were just nice people. You know, they often helped you out if you needed it, or, you know, chatted about your interest of trains. And yeah, it was
Yeah.
brilliant. But
Thanks,
nowadays, the kids can't play in the streets or nothing. It's
thanks for
ridiculous.
showing that cover of Must I Remember, and the fact that it's got 5-star review. Mm.
There's a lot of books that you've done and plays and whatever. There's got big reviews. It's trying to work out why they won't sell is a problem, isn't it? And I did invite a guest on tonight, but she I don't know. I think we had to change her last week to this week, and she probably got fed up. But she was going to tell us how the books can sell in self-publishing, even though you've had some bad luck. But she never did come on, and well, maybe that's another topic for another day.
Yeah, well, I've managed to make a connection with a lady that lives in Vegas, and she knows a casino owner. He's almost got a Hollywood style name. His name is Joe Clint. And so he is agreeable to doing joint promotions and to sell the novel Odds On Favorite, which is a casino thriller. And even we're talking about making a film at his casino based on my screenplay, and the name of the casino in the story, in the novel, and then in the screenplay is actually the Mangrove. And the protagonist, the main character, is a Chinese woman from Macau, which is a former Portuguese colony, within a short ferry ride distance from Hong Kong. And there's a big casino. Casinos are all over Macau, and it's like a casino heaven for people that like gambling. There's another 5-star review about Odds On Favorite.
And that's Goodreads. That's one of the so-called top review sites and book companies. Yeah, but that was an amazing coincidence. If only you could meet somebody else that links up with every single book of yours. But for casino, this is definitely a good coincidence, a good start. You know.
Yeah, well, the publisher that my contact found for this reissuance of this novel, it sounds very promising. So I think it could become a bestseller this time around.
Yeah, Mangrove. So is that the name of the casino in question as well?
No,
The person in
no,
Florida?
Joe's Casino will just be Joe's Casino, but for
Oh,
the
okay.
purposes of the film, it will be called the Mangrove.
All right, that's still quite good. And like I said to you the other day in the email, I said you will make it rich one day. It's just a matter of when and how. It's got to happen. You can't. Well, it's not about making yourself rich either, is it? It's about letting that talent be noticed is more important than money. But money helps you write more books and does more films.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the tide is turning in my favor. One of my publishers is actually called Turning the Tide Publishing.
Ah, there you go, turning the tide in your luck.
Yeah. So I thought I could share some excerpts from my writings on the show for a little bit of entertainment value. I went to Perry with Mei Ling. We went to Paris and we spent a good portion of our time there in Père Lachaise Cemetery. And so this this chapter from one of my novels is called Le Chat Noir, meaning the black cat.
Wow.
So are you good with me reading an excerpt?
Yeah, carry on. I'm always interested in things like this because
Okay,
I
well,
don't know. I've always thought that there's certain books you see on the bookshelf
yeah,
that you think, well, nah, they're just the same old. But then you read some of them and you think, well, that's exciting. I have read a few books in my life, but I've never really been that interested in them, and I don't know why. But I will watch a nice film though, so maybe all a book is a paper version of a film.
yeah. Well, I mean, Ray Bradbury's sci-fi novel Fahrenheit 451 is interesting because it presents a society of the future where firemen do not put out fires, they start fires. If you've got any books in your house, which you're not supposed to have, they set your house on fire until every book is burned. and
Yeah,
and in that society, people only watch a kind of they have an entertainment room in their house and they watch TV. That's all they watch. And there's, something similar to reality TV. And they watch those episodes, and some of them, like the housewife Mildred in this novel, become addicted to the soap drama. And the characters in the soap that they watch every day become like family to them, to the point where those characters are more family to her than her own husband. And the way Ray Bradbury, the author, explains how society became this dystopian type of society is books basically went out of fashion. They were too long, too time consuming, and people lost interest in reading novels and they became shorter fiction. and the shorter fiction eventually changed into film, short films, and everything became an audiovisual culture, and books they went out of fashion, and eventually they were seen as a problem by the authorities because they informed people about a bygone society that no longer existed, and they didn't want people to know about it. They only wanted them to know about their present world view. So they banned books and forbid anyone from reading. Not very nice prospect, I think. Horrible, but whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should check that novel out sometime. It's an interesting read. Okay, so Le Chat Noir is this chapter from my book, What Made Us Write with Our Feet. It's an autobiographical novel. It is clear that the common is by no means good, and that what is truly common is people's faith in the common good. Fortunately, there are things uncommon, and that really is good. If there is anything that defies mediocrity, it is he who has to dodge all the other fish as he swims upstream. The other fish will conspire against him because they do not like anyone swimming against the current, but he will not be deterred from his course. You see, my reader, an artist is like a salmon. He must swim upstream to get to his spawning grounds, since this is the only place where he can produce any offspring. Others will regard him as a strange fish simply because he is the only one capable of swimming against the current, leaping waterfalls and dodging obstacles. You see, my reader, I am a salmon, which is why I spent 4 days in Père Lachaise Cimetière in Paris. I found my spawning grounds by swimming against the current. I knew I would never give birth to anything inspirational by following all the other schools of fish through the streets of Paris. I knew I would never reach my spawning grounds by swimming with the current. What could I possibly find to write about at the Eiffel Tower or the Louvre? The interesting thing about swimming against the current is that you sometimes bump into another solitary making his way upstream. Speaking as one solitary to another, my reader, I am also always on the lookout for others who are like me. Truly, it is extraordinary to come across someone so ordinary. That is why I refer to you in the singular, my reader, as I know there is only one of you out there. But don't be discouraged because you think someone else might be the extraordinarius. He may already be losing his status because he considers himself exceptional for being the exception. As soon as he begins to think highly of himself, he becomes like all the rest. For as long as you remain unaware of your high status, my reader, you will be ordinary enough to assume the chair. It comes as no surprise, then, that I was taken by surprise by the appearance of another solitary in Père Lachaise Cimetière. You see, my reader, the extraordinarius would never be conspicuous. He is too unaware of himself to recognize his importance. He is not used to grandstanding. He is far too humble an opinion of himself. My first impression of him was that he was quite ordinary. He was portly and balding, with thick, dark eyebrows and a prominent nose. He wore a light brown cardigan whose buttons were on the verge of popping every time he took a breath. He walked with a slight limp, which I attributed to his being too big for his shoes, his feet being too big for his shoes. Indeed, there seemed nothing exceptional about a man walking about with a watering can in his hand. He had obviously come to pay his respects. Perhaps he had even brought some flowers along to place on the grave of the deceased. Or perhaps he had lost his wife and came often to sit by her graveside. My reader perhaps wonders at my morbid curiosity, may even find me a trifle ghoulish. Perish the thought, my reader. I could see that there was nothing tangential about his movements. He was entirely indiscriminate about which graves he watered. And as it did seem rather unlikely that he had come to pay his respects to half the departed souls in the cemetery, I could only conclude that he was a caretaker. You see, my reader, I could not help but find the man ordinary for being occupied in so humble an occupation. So when he suddenly approached me to give a learned account of the various historical figures buried in the cemetery, I naturally felt honored. How could a man of such breeding and education find himself in so humble an occupation? Could it be that he was too ordinary to recognize his talents? Was he not all the more extraordinary because of it? Perhaps he was the extraordinarius. The extraordinary fellow introduced himself as Giraud Lodojinski and proceeded to give me a long-winded account of his genealogy in French. It seems he came from nobility and was a direct descendant of the aristocratic families of Tsar Nicholas's day. He informed me that his family had had the privilege of hearing recitals by some of the greatest court composers of the day. He pulled out a newspaper clipping to validate his claims, but he needn't have bothered. The whole story was far too far-fetched not to be believed. According to the article, Rachmaninoff dedicated his first symphony to a cousin of Giraud's by the name of Anna Lodojinski. It seems the composer was enamored with the beautiful lady, but was forced to confine his affections to the Platonic sphere, as she was known to be married. And if this was not enough to confirm his lineage was well aligned, he also informed me that his grandfather had known the great conductor Vasily Safanoff. According to Giraud, his grandfather Nicolas Lodojinski was himself a conductor and accompanied Safanoff on his American tour. On the opening night, Safanoff paid his dear friend the honor of conducting the symphony with him jointly. As a duet performed between two orchestra leaders is rather unusual, it is hardly surprising that it succeeded in bringing the house down. Unbeknownst to Nicolas, Safanoff extended the honor to him as a farewell gesture. Giraud's grandfather returned to Russia, never dreaming that he would never see his friend again. News of Safanoff's defection traveled quickly. Yeah, so Giraud Lodojinski was a Russian emigre that I met in Paris in the cemetery. And we went to the cemetery every day, and he gave me a tour of the famous people buried there over the course of several days. For my own part, I never doubted that Giraud was from high and noble birth. Only an aristocrat would have the grace to humble himself. He is the only one noble enough to confront his ordinariness. Only a lord has the courage to scale all the castle walls to discover the hallowedness of his fortress. He has no delusions of grandeur. He knows he will be powerless against the enemy should his castle ever come under siege. Observe him in battle, my reader. He will be the first to admit defeat. He is never too proud to wave a white flag. He is noble enough even for that. Only a vassal of low birth would display his colors to the last. He is not noble enough to admit defeat. He is too base born to confront his ordinariness. He feels he has something to prove. He has delusions of grandeur because he wants to feel important. He does not realize that it is precisely what makes him unimportant. Everyone wants to feel important, which is why very few people do. He is truly important who seeks nothing for himself. I could tell you, my reader, that I was only too pleased to make connections with someone so well connected. I would have taken him for an aristocrat regardless of his family connections. As it turned out, Giraud was the caretaker of Père Lachaise Cemetery. He was not the caretaker of Père Lachaise Cemetery at all, but cared for the grounds on a purely voluntary basis. Giraud was so ordinary that he had even humbled himself to do a menial job without pay. Giraud was so ordinary that he was watering the graves of all the prominent figures buried in the cemetery. He had asked if he could conduct tours for money, but was told that he would require permission from the Parks Authority. He knew it would take months before he could begin promoting his tours, so he decided to give them for free. That a man of breeding and education could humble himself to take so menial job was noble in itself. That he could do so without pay was the hallmark of an aristocrat. Only a noble could have such a low opinion of himself, my reader. Strange to think that his ordinariness could make him so extraordinary. Our first stop was the grave of Jean Mauriac, a long-term friend and confidant of Mallarmé's, whose real name we soon learned was Apadiantantopoulos. He changed his name in the hope of gaining popular acceptance, but it seems that his pseudonym was to remain as obscure as his real name. You see, my reader, Apadiantantopoulos had come to France from Greece. It seems that he was one of the poets Plato banned from his republic. And as the poet had no hope of gaining acceptance in his own republic, it was only natural that he would seek asylum in the city of life. It seems that when Giraud first came across Mauriac's grave some 10 years previously, its state of dereliction implied obscurity, a situation he hoped to remedy by covering his grave with flowers. He had come every day for the past 10 years to water the flowers he had placed on the grave of the forgotten poet. He considered it an injustice that the artistic achievements of this poet should be forgotten, an irremediable situation he pathetically hoped to remedy by performing his daily tribute. After visiting the grave of Jean Mauriac, it became more difficult to follow Giraud as he explained en français where he intended to lead us. You see, my reader, it is not easy task trying to follow someone whom you can barely follow. The problem was the pace he was setting. He spoke so quickly that we were barely able to keep up. There were several times when we lost him, but we soon understood where his speech was going when he led us to the grave of Stephen Heller. It was at this point that I knew exactly where his monologue was taking us. I had the sense to gain a sense of where he was leading us. He was heading down the path of his own past. His autobiography was written in the epitaphs of these neglected graves. You see, my reader, it is no accident that Giraud felt affinity with Stephen Heller. His story was part of Giraud's own life story, the story of a life which has never got underway. Heller was a great musician, but like Giraud, he never gained any recognition for his work. He was a mentor of the young Chopin, who later went on to gain all the fame. It was only natural that Giraud should feel some sympathy for the dead musician, as he believed his own genius had not received the recognition it deserved. I have never been like the others, he informed me in English. I knew at the time I was a young boy that there was a difference between me and the others. Why did you feel like that? I implored. I remember he said, pausing, how do you say you pull on the cord and the light goes click? You mean the switch? I offered. Yes, yes, he nodded. The switch. I was turning on the switch for the, how do you say, the thing that turns the records, the turntable. I said, that's it, he concurred, the turntable. Anyway, the teacher could not remember who plays the music, so I tell her, it is Haydn. She says, I am silly. It is not Haydn, she says. I tell her, I know it is Haydn. She told me I talk rubbish, but I know it is Haydn. She must have thought you were too young to know about such things. Yes, he agreed. And it is like that always. I always know what others do not know. But when I try to tell them, they think I am off my, how do you say? You lean back on the chair and it comes forward again. Off your rocker, I offered. Yes, off my rocker, he said, smiling delightedly. So I am off my rocker. Well, one day they will see I am right. Right about what? I demanded. There are the conspirators in France, he continued, who want that you say nothing. They call themselves liberals, but they are not liberals. They control all. They do not want that you say anything. And if you say anything, you are finished. Say what things? I demanded. Anything, he argued. If you say anything, you are called a reactionary. Who are they? I queried. They're the ones destroying culture, he argued. First, they start with language. It is said that we do not anymore speak the French in France, but Franglish. Absurd as his conjectures may have seemed, I was inclined not to dismiss Giraud's claims. After all, conspiracy and ostracism are nothing new. Anyway, yeah, that's about it for my excerpt. I don't want to go on forever.
I was falling asleep there, but not in a bad way. In fact, it reminded me of something I was gonna do.
Is that right?
And didn't do it, because I do like films. I like information.
Yeah.
So what's the best thing to have if you want both? An audio book. So I can just listen to the story with somebody else telling me rather than having to scroll down pages and, that kind of thing. It's a cheating way of reading a book.
Yeah, audiobooks are becoming more popular. I guess people can listen to them in their car, and it's as satisfying as reading a book, but you just don't have to occupy yourself with the reading. You can just drive and listen.
Yeah, and you can still do what you do when you're reading a book, like trying to see what happens next in your head, and it's really good.
Here in Canada, the most popular coffee place is Tim Hortons. So this is a Tim Hortons coffee.
Should have called it Tim Spearman's. Then you'd be rich.
Yeah, can you see that? Tim Hortons.
Yeah, we have the burger chain over here, but wait, is it a burger chain or a coffee shop chain?
It's just a coffee shop chain. It's kind of like a deli and donut type place.
That's it, yeah. We have it over here, but I don't know. I think a nice filter coffee that you make yourself is much better.
Yeah. Well, for people that are rushing to work in the morning, it's a popular place.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, we don't even have a coffee shop here where I live, so...
Yeah.
So I've got to make my own anyway, so rushing anywhere or not rushing anywhere. Yeah, I've put your Facebook page on the front. And shakespearescodex.com as well.
So when I was in Britain, I went to see a friend in Cardiff, Wales. And when I was there in Cardiff, I met an Indian enchantress named Sandhya. Sandhya means
Sundia.
Sandhya means sunset, basically.
Yeah, I read what Mei Ling means. That was quite good. Sundia. I've not been so good as you, or I suppose I've not been as greedy either. Uh, I met somebody and I stayed with her and still with her to this very day.
Yeah, Joe.
Yeah, Joe, we met when we was 20 or 21.
You were kind of like the knight in shining armor rescuing her from distress, right?
Yeah. Well, basically, yeah. Funnily enough, that's how it actually started.
Yeah.
Whether we'd get together or not, it wouldn't really matter. Just to rescue her was the only mission at the time.
Yeah, the damsel in distress, Joe, was rescued by the dashing, handsome knight Andy. Andy.
From Herrywood country, Herrywood the Wake country.
Yeah. And then you married, and the hotel that you stayed in changed its name after you left, remember?
Yeah, I'm going to try and see if I can bring the hotel up. Yeah, because it's, hang on. I know it's something to do with that kind of thing. I just my brain's not with it at the moment, but I will when I find it. Um, it was blah, 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 blah. Where's it gone?
I should mention that Andy discovered that he's the reincarnation of Oliver Cromwell.
So keep reminding me. Oh, there we go. Yeah, of course it was. Yeah, because it was originally called. Oh God, no, no. That's what I've been trying to think. You see, what the original name was, to
Uh-huh.
try and find the picture of the original name. But yeah, the Oliver Cromwell Hotel. It is now called. But I'm try to find the old name, but I can't find it now.
Okay, well, it
It'll
doesn't
be
matter.
somewhere.
What we need to realize is that that is an uncanny kind of coincidence that it would change its name to the Oliver Cromwell after you had stayed there.
And we stayed in a four-poster bed. And the four-poster bed,
Yeah.
after about 21 pints of Guinness, aged 21 years of age, I wanted a pint of Guinness for every year I was born. Joanne was so tired and she was nodding off, and I had to go across the road. There was a chicken place. It was called Chicken George, a bit like KFC, but a local version of
Okay.
it. So I got the chicken, the chips, and the milkshake. Put them on the bed, started eating them, and then I spilt the milkshake all over the bed covers, woke Joanne up, and that was the end of that one. Never did enjoy my dinner after that.
You romantic, you.
Never got time for a Yankee Panky.
No, but you did get a good spanky.
I definitely got told off.
Yeah.
Yes, 5 minutes along the high street in March, Cambridgeshire. So yeah, no, it's definitely the same one because I just can't find the old building because what they've done, they've built. It's as if they've attached a Travelodge type of building to the old building, and yeah, it's mad.
And do you remember that there's a family called Revel that was related to Cromwell? And I told you that my paternal great grandmother was her maiden name was Revel.
Did I tell you the same story about me and my mum? In fact, I'll show you there. My mum there, right? Her
Yeah.
maiden name was Revel, which is Revell.
Right.
I don't
And
know if you're
that's
talking about the same name.
yeah. My father's mother's maiden name was Revel. So there
Oh
you go.
wow, that's another funny one, isn't it?
Yeah. It's another coincidence that ties us together as good friends through different lifetimes.
Yeah, she was called Sheila Revel, and then obviously married a preacher, and then married somebody else after that. But yeah, my aunties obviously was the same. There was all Revels from the Fenland area of Cambridgeshire, where the boggy marshes are, and yeah, it's all quite interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, I
I
told
wish
you about,
I
my
wish I
original.
could come back and tour England knowing what I know now. I didn't know half of what I know now when I was there. So there was a lot of sites that I could have seen that I never got to see.
Well, who knows? We've got 3 bedrooms now, and one of them's got your name on it.
Well, thank you. The guest room. Oh, I'd like nothing
Yeah.
better than to come and see you.
Yeah, I was just looking at the Revel history, family crest, and coat of arms. Um, Revel is one of the many new names that came to England following the Norman conquest of 1066, which links it to Cromwell and Hereward the Wake and all that stuff. The Revel family originally lived in Warwickshire, which is Shakespeare country. It's quite amazing. You couldn't make it up, could you?
Yeah, I was interested in the fact that Robert Plant, the famous singer of Led Zeppelin, he was from Warwickshire originally.
Oh yeah, the name is derived from the old French word revel, which means pride, rebellion, sport from the word reveler,
Mm.
which means to rebel. Yeah, that is definitely me. I'm a sibling of a rebellion, a rebeller. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, it's mainly the first people mainly was found in Hertfordshire and Northamptonshire. Well, years ago, Peterborough, March, Wisbech was Northamptonshire. They then changed it over to Cambridgeshire when I was born
Mm.
after 1966. So it makes sense. I might even take up learning about family history next. It seems very interesting. A lot of the rebels went to Ireland, Australia, US, Massachusetts, Salem, Massachusetts. Well, I met a guy, remember, what was his name? Did radio shows together. Bill Zam. He was for Salem or Salim in Massachusetts.
Oh yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
Yeah. No, all these connections is mental, isn't it? It's good.
Yeah. The etymology of names is quite fascinating. I agree.
Yeah, John Revel was a British sheriff, a sheriff of Nottingham area. But also my mum's dad was called John Revel, so
For our American audience, Andy, could you explain the difference between a sheriff in the UK and a sheriff in the States, like the Old West? What's the difference?
that's difficult because there's many sheriffs. Okay, so hang on. I'll Google it so I can explain it better.
Okay. I think
So
in your
in Scotland,
yeah.
the magistrate is of England is called a sheriff in Scotland. So he's the legal guy that can send you to prison up to 6 months. But there is a sheriff, obviously, of England in the older days, which that I'm trying to work out. He's a high sheriff. Oh yeah, mainly the ceremonial people from the city, where Scotland's are judges, and yeah. But you also got the High Sheriff of London, which is basically a debt collector. His department collects debts. So there's several different sheriffs. And probably in the olden days, the sheriffs were probably like the US sheriffs, the ones with the big guns and all that.
Yeah.
That's a bit of useless history, but yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's all fascinating indeed. I spent some time in Leamington Spa, which I guess its history was that it was during the Roman occupation, it was like a spa town. And so there are Regency style buildings, a lot of Regency style buildings in Leamington Spa. And, the wickedest man in the world, Aleister Crowley, lived at 40 Clarendon Avenue, which was my university rooming house. I was there with some British students rooming there for some time. And Sandhya actually came and visited me there. And another girl that I became involved with, her name was Beverly Singleton, and apparently that's from the French Sangleton, which was a Norman family name.
Yeah, and of course, your surname is very Scottish and Northern English as well.
Well, apparently, this is an interesting side note. The Watson clan was under the protection of the McNay clan, who were the original royal family of Ireland. But when the McNays were chased out of Ireland by the snakes were chased out of Ireland, I believe that mythology of the snakes refers to the pharaonic headdress with the cobra, because the Irish royal family is in fact the pharaohs of Egypt. It's the pharaonic line, because the pharaoh Conchobar came to Ireland to found the royal line of the Irish kings. And the McNay family is the first. Apparently, I think McNay means son of the champion. And so when the McNays were chased out of Ireland, they came to the county of Westmoreland in Scotland, and they changed their name to Neville. And to give you some English history, the king lines of both the House of York and the House of Lancaster, which were the two warring families of the War of the Roses, those two family lines, Lancaster and the House of Lancaster and the House of York, they tried to marry into the Neville family to legitimize their claim to the crown. Because in the peerage system of England, the Neville family was as high as it goes, because that's the royal line of Ireland. And I should mention that the royal family of Ireland is both a pharaonic royal line as well as a Hebrew royal line or an Israelite royal line, because the king Zedekiah sent his son, the prophet Jeremiah, and his daughter, the princess Tefi, out of the country during the Babylonian exile. For the safety of them both, they were told to leave. When they left, they went on a voyage, first to Egypt, and then they stopped at just a minute, I'm trying to think of it. They stopped off at Gibraltar, and then they carried on to Cornwall, Land's End, and then they went from there to Ireland. And the story goes that Tefi married into the Irish royal family. So it's a hybrid of Egyptian pharaohs and this ancient Israelite princess. And so it's influenced the entire royal history of Scotland and England as well.
Oh, sounds amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked about mainly the falsification of history on the show. And we've talked, I think, a little bit about the COVID-19 pandemic and vaccination and so on. But we haven't really talked about other aspects of history that just are little known, not falsified, just things that people don't know.
Maybe we'll have a history lesson next week. Because I'm sure if you started off with an era and it would lead into another era that would lead into a connection between, that's what history's all about, isn't it? Linking the dots.
Yeah, connecting the dots of history. Yeah, very interesting.
All righty, should we call it a day for this one?
Yeah, I guess it's gone an hour, eh?
Yeah, it's not that. I've got my other problem to deal with. I've got to get my proper battery charger out, then I'll be
All right,
fine.
brother. Okay. Well, it was great to see you. Nice to do something refreshing and new that we've never done before.
Yeah, I forgot about the Revel connection.
Okay, love you, buddy.
And you, and if anybody wants to discuss anything, it's free